Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Thursday morning. Game 2 in the Western Conference Finals is in the books, and somewhat predictably, the Oklahoma City Thunder won, 122-113. They took the lead in the second quarter. It was tied after one. They took the lead in the second quarter, and it was tight. They'd open up a double-digit lead to get to 10 or 11, and the Spurs come roaring right back and cut it to 3 or 5. But the Thunder eventually win it by the 122-113 margin. There were a lot of differences between Game 1 and 2. There were a few similarities. One similarity is Victor Wembanyama was very good. The difference was, whereas he was not only very good, he was great in Game 1. He was spectacular. He was merely very good. 21 points, 17 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 blocks. That's nothing to sneeze at. Now, it's not 40 and 20. It's not 41 points, 24 boards. By controlling him a little bit, the Thunder gave themselves a chance to win. He had to go off for the Spurs to win Game 1 in overtime. This was different. They didn't try to get cute and put guards on him. They went back to big men. And Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren took their turns, and they both did well. Hartenstein's 13 rebounds, I think that was a really, really big deal in this game. The rebounds, San Antonio won 45-41, but it was close enough. And Hartenstein led the way with 13. Nobody else had more than McCain's 6. So you got to give it up to Isaiah. And Chet Holmgren finished with 13 points and 4 boards. But I think the real key is that the paint points for Wembanyama went way down. He had 3. He had a couple of putbacks off his own misses that were spectacular. One to tip in and one to follow dunk. And they were really good. But he was crushing it. He had 10 buckets in the paint in Game 1. So it was a little more reasonable here. And I think that was a major advantage for Oklahoma City. The play of those bigs and the fact they just put bigs on Wemby and they didn't get cute and try to create mismatches on the perimeter with taller guys that the threes have problems shooting over. Let Wemby go nuts, make the other guys beat us. But he was too good. So Game 2 was a different deal, and I thought that was a big factor. Another big factor is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played like an MVP. He had a terrible Game 1, but he's really good in Game 2. 30 points. He did it on 50% shooting, 12 of 24. Interestingly enough, he did not make a three-pointer in the game on his way to 30 points. He had 6 of them at the line. There's been a lot of talk about how many free throws he shoots, but 6 is a reasonable number. It's nothing outrageous about 6 free throws. So just a really solid game for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. After going 7 for 23 in the first game, he was 12 of 24 in the second. And the funny thing is, it's 1-1, and he hasn't gotten hot from 3 yet. At some point, he's going to get it going. He's 2 of 10. He was 0 for 3 in this game. He was 2 for 7 in the first one. He's not a great three-point shooter. He only shot 40% from 3 once, and that was back in 2020, 2021. But he is a solid 37 or 38% shooter the last couple of years. So at some point, he's not 2 of 10 guy either. So at some point, he's going to get back on track, and he's going to have a game shooting it. And so if he has that in one of these games in San Antonio and they split and the series is 2-2 going back to Oklahoma City for Game 5, I'm not going to be surprised. And realistically, I don't think you are either, because you probably watch about as much NBA basketball, especially playoff basketball, as I do. And it feels like we've seen this movie before. They split 2 in Oklahoma. I won't be surprised if they split 2 in Texas. Now, one thing to watch here in this series going forward is Caruso, because he was great in Game 1, and he wasn't as awesome in Game 2, but he was still really good. He had a smaller role, took fewer shots, more guys had it going. They were getting the bigs more touches and all that. So he had 17 points. He didn't have 30, but he was efficient. 5 of 7 shooting the ball, 3 of 4 from 3, 4 of 4 from the line. Super efficient from Alex Caruso again. And the overall numbers aren't as big and aren't as gaudy, but, man, his impact on the game with the 17 points, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. 0. So impressed with Caruso again. But real balance from Oklahoma City. Their whole deal is that they got depth. They got a lot of guys they can throw at you. Yeah, they had 7 guys in double figures. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander led the way, and Caruso had 17. But then you had Hartenstein in doubles, Holmgren in double figures, Jalen Williams in double figures, Casey Wallace, Jared McLean, and A.J. Mitchell. So a lot of guys in double figures. And that depth is going to be important because just as we saw in the regular season, when there were so many players down, it was a bad regular season. There were just so many stars missing so many games. Now, I will say we've got the stars. SGA and Wembanyama, who along with the Joker in Denver are the three best players in the league right now. They're playing. But behind them, guys are going down left and right. We still haven't seen De'Aaron Fox in this, the former Sacramento King, now in San Antonio. We have not seen him. He hasn't dressed for either one of these games, hasn't played a minute. And he was joined on the sideline because Dylan Harper got hurt and left the game. So now the Thunder are down two guys. Now, to be fair, the Spurs are down two guys. To be fair, the Thunder are also down guys. Jalen Williams limped off. He had just 4 points in 7 minutes. Looked like his left hamstring. He was reaching back for it and had the towel, which I suppose had a heating pad or something in it. I don't know. But he was limping off, and we didn't see him again. He only played 7 minutes the whole game. And then late in the game, A.J. Mitchell went down. It looked like some kind of groin injury, the way he was reaching, maybe quad. But either way, bad. Again, soft tissue, legs. And this goes back to Locke's theory that there's so much running, so much jumping, so much cutting, so many explosive movements, changing directions that guys are going to break down. And guys are playing really hard right now. Guys are flying all over the place, diving on the court, banging into each other. These teams, they know they got to bring their best to win this. That, you come out and you play a B-plus game, it might get you beat. It might get you beat. So they're the maximum level of effort. And what do you know? Now we've got 3, depending on Mitchell, maybe 4 guys out. We'll see if they stay out. We'll see if anyone can come back for game 3. But it doesn't look good. You want to see teams at full strength really going at it. And guys are falling left and right. We're down 2 players on each team. Not a good trend. And again, we always look for things in the playoffs and think, how does this apply to the Jazz? I think the people who are, wailing, crying, gnashing of teeth, well, if they draft Boozer, well, where will he fit? How will Filipowski play? Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to miss games. You're going to have depth. I bet a lot of those problems solve themselves. So just Austin Ainge and his whole team, Danny Ainge, Jay-Z, those guys have to get together, just get the best players. And if the Jazz have too many good players, that's a great problem to have. I honestly don't believe they're going to have it. But if they do, it's a great problem to have. Outstanding. Make a midseason trade. Lighten your bench if you have to. Do something at the trade deadline. Go get some more draft picks. Do something. I just don't think it's going to be a problem. And I think these injuries are going to keep happening. I think there's a lot to the pace of play and how much these guys play. And maybe it goes back to how much they play as teenagers. They get in these AAU tournaments and they're playing so many games in so many weeks. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the way the style of the game has changed. But for whatever reason, this is no longer a fluke and a coincidence. This is how things work. Guys get hurt, and you better have the next wave of guys ready to step in. So I wouldn't worry too much about the depth. I really wouldn't. So now we'll see where it goes from here. Game 3 coming up Friday night. I'm intrigued by it. Switches back to the East, Game 2 tonight. And I was pretty confident in Oklahoma City at home. You just don't see teams get down 0-2 at home very often. Now, Cleveland on the road, this could be a different deal. It'll be interesting to see what happens and how Mitchell and Harden respond. And I really like Cleveland's bigs. They don't always impose their will on the game. And maybe they're not given a chance. Maybe the guards are too ball dominant. They need to figure that out. But they got talented bigs. Cleveland's, they're not built like a champion, I don't think. I don't think they have the guy at the top. They're one of the top 10 players in the league, and they usually need one of the top 5. And I think that's why the winner of the San Antonio-Oklahoma City series is going to have a top 3 player in the league. And I think that's why they're going to win when they get to the finals. Whoever emerges in the conference finals should win in the NBA finals. But having said all that, Cleveland still has, they got a good team. They got some balance there. So I'm intrigued to see what happens in Game 2 tonight. Other stuff that happened in the NHL playoffs, PK Subban on ESPN was saying that the Knights had a chance against the Avalanche. I really didn't believe it. Sure enough, Vegas up 2-0 after 2 periods, up 3-0 early in the third, and they hold on to win 4-2 with an empty netter to put the game away. So they win Game 1 in Colorado. We've seen crazier things happen, to be sure. So Colorado, the 1 seed in the entire thing, best record in the regular season, but they dropped Game 1 at home to Vegas. We'll see where this goes. From here. And my Padres can't hit again. Shutout. Shohei Ohtani, 5 shutout innings, and he homered. He doesn't usually hit when he pitches, but they decided, well, we're giving you a few games off. We'll give you a shot in San Diego. And sure enough, he hits a homer and then throws 5 shutout innings, and Dodgers win 4-0. Man, the Cubbies, they were hot, but they've lost 5 in a row now. The Brewers sweep the Cubbies. The Brewers have a 1.5 game lead over the Cubbies and the Cardinals in the Central Division. That looks crazy, man. That division is absolutely bonkers. And I suppose it's probably just going to stay that way. They got pretty good teams. They play each other so much, I don't know if they can all finish with any records, but we're 49 games in, and they all got winning records right now. Pittsburgh's in last place at 25-24, and they get a plus 22 run differential, so maybe they can pull it off. All right, DJ and PK. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, there's a poll out in The Athletic. Where do people want to play in the NBA? Where do they not want to play? What's the number one team they don't want to go to? What are they saying about Utah? What are they saying about the Jazz? It's not great, but it's not as bad as you think it is. Kind of feels like progress is being made, And you're never going to be in a place where everybody loves you. That's not going to happen. We'll get to that next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. PK, you and Dennis Lindsley pledged your undying devotion to one cause, changing the view of Utah, the Wasatch Front, and Salt Lake City throughout the NBA. And Dennis now works elsewhere, but you're making progress.
Yeah, absolutely. He joked about that he and I were going to change the perception of the Jazz because it had been negative, obviously. People had come out and scoffed at it, and I knew nothing. Well, it's not that I didn't know anything about Salt Lake City and Utah. I had been here a time or two, very briefly, if not just driving through on my way to Jackson Hole before I actually got the job with the Tribune and moved here. But then when I got here, you talk about the sleeping giant. I always thought University of Utah football was a sleeping giant because I saw BYU do what they did, and I can remember going back. I can remember literally asking Bruce Woodbury, the longtime sports information director, what's going on here? Why isn't this program better? It should be better. And then it did get better, and look at it now. I was right. And so many people from all walks of life came here and played football here and then stayed in the community. I see them out occasionally, see them at the gym or wherever. And they're fine here. They thrive here. They're not just fine, they thrive here. And why couldn't that be at the professional level? And I think little by little, or big by big, little by big, whatever, it has been chipped away. And this is sort of anecdotal.
It's anecdotal, and how the question is framed something. Matters, but that's what I say. There is some truth buried amongst a lot of stuff here. The Athletic ran a player poll, and there were lots of topics. It was a varied thing. But one of the questions in there is, what's the team you least want to be traded to? Oh, but no. The runaway winner. Turns out LeBron James has the pulse of the NBA players. He made a comment about not wanting to go to Memphis. 35.8% of the vote, Memphis by a wide margin. And they're in the middle of a rebuild, and the city's got issues, and nobody wants to go there. Washington was second at 11.7. Sacramento third at 10.8. New Orleans at 6.7. And then Brooklyn and Utah at 5. Largely, players don't want to go play for bad teams. When I look at those 6, what do they have in common? Well, they've been losing. That's what players seem to want to avoid. And we want players who want to be about winning. So, okay, that's good. And the next group of teams, Charlotte and Portland. Now, what I found interesting, Brooklyn got 5% of the vote. New York got 3.3%. And the Lakers got 1.7%. So that's 10% of the vote for New York and LA teams. I'm a little surprised the Clippers are the one who wasn't on the list.
Yeah, but some people that involves way more complications.
It does.
If you have a game in the Garden or whatever they're calling the Brooklyn.
So hard to get there and move around. There's so many people. Yeah. And let's face it, some people just aren't big city people.
Right.
Not everybody grows up in the big city and wants to be in the big city, and there's the two biggest cities. So I get all of that. Now, I do think this is a little squishy because players don't usually have just one place they don't want to go. If you told a player they're going to have 3, they're going to have 5, they're going to have 8,
this
whatever.
isn't a scientific poll.
Exactly.
We understand that.
But the fact that Utah is now tied for 5th when there's a time that I think we all are pretty sure they would have been 1st or 2nd.
Yeah, it was the butt of jokes.
Yeah.
It was a mock. It was okay. It was fashionable to mock this area. The Carlos Boozer interview in Miami. Well, you're glad, I forget what it was, and the setup to it. Well, good thing you're out of there. And he said, no, it's not that bad. Well, because he's been here. He's been in the community. And he knows what the community's about. And now he knows both. This was a prior administration, but now he knows this administration.
Yeah.
And look at it. The owner is willing to spend money, building a whole basically bought a mall. And
yeah, basically. And he did. Yeah, he bought the Southtown Mall, and he's redeveloping it.
Yes. And it's 2 feet off the freeway.
Hockey facility, basketball facility,
right.
And now they're partnering with Intermountain Health, and IHC's putting in a big old clinic in there.
Yeah.
Which malls need to be redesigned because so many people shop online now. So
right. Yes.
So
ever since Kmart went away, that's what I do.
That's it, man. Once you couldn't walk down there and get those cocktail dresses.
Right. I'd get one a year. Whatever was in style, I'd get her one every year. And it worked, let me tell you. So you got all those things. You've got, and I think Ainge carries a name throughout the NBA. He's still involved. His son has the same name. To an extent, is a chip off the old block, as they say. I think he lives and breathes basketball and has a great sense about what to do basketball-wise. And so that the Ainge name is going to be attached for the Jazz probably for another 15, 20 years, and who knows what happens after that. So everything is pointing in a positive direction. And you got a guy like you got young guys. You got young African-Americans who clearly like it. Keontae George, you want me to go back and represent the team? I'm there. Dress up, looking good, looking sharp, do interviews, presenting it well. Mm-hmm. He's well-spoken, and he's a good player. He's made a dramatic level of improvement. So obviously that speaks to the young man being willing to put the time in. But I think it also speaks to the support staff allowing him and helping him to get better. And so I think that we're to the point in my mind, as much as it can be debunked, it has been debunked.
And it'll still come down to a player-by-player decision. We may still hear it again, but we may not.
But the player...
Nice as hell. I ain't going to
Yeah,
hold you.
I was going to bring that up, Yak. I was just waiting for him to finish. There are other players. It could be a formal setting, right? When you choose a player to represent the organization at a high-profile TV event, that's one thing. It's another thing when a player, completely unprompted, is driving around town and puts something up on social media.
Nice as hell. I ain't going to hold you. Nice.
That's Colin Sexton.
Thank you, Colin Sexton.
And, he had a way of expressing himself, or has a way, and he's a little different, and that's fine.
But to your point has always been, let's not lump all the players in the league. We're talking 450 players who are coming from all over the place with all kinds of different experiences.
Right.
All over the country, all over the continent, all over the world.
Well, with foreign players, yeah.
Right. Yeah, well...
But the big knock was the young black player couldn't enjoy here.
Right.
No. I always thought that was a racist assumption that you're going to assign a belief to somebody that you've never met, and he's not going to like it here. Bull crap. Maybe some don't.
And that's why I say
you can go anywhere, and some don't.
It'll be and this poll shows that. I mean, this poll shows that right there. Just going to NBA players themselves, there's 13 different teams getting votes, almost half the league. And a bunch of them all are the small markets that to one degree or another take this kind of hit. The Indianas, the Milwaukees, the Utahs, and Portlands. It's cold, it's rainy, it's snowy, it's not glamorous, it's not, and they're all on the list. But Brooklyn, New York, L.A., New Orleans, Washington, D.C. are on the list too.
The young African-American who's in the position to play NBA ball has a level of education, we're speaking generally, but has a level of education that he and his folks, whoever they may be, his handlers, literally maybe his folks, has been involved with all sorts of different people, because usually, and most of them are one and done, but they've been identified as a professional prospect 15, maybe 16, certainly by 17, and
yes.
He's had varied experiences of playing around the country
for all the gnashing
and
teeth,
interacting with all sorts of people. He has a level of experience that can't be bought in the classroom. Then he goes to college for a year, and he's experiencing all sorts of people. So he's quite comfortable dealing with all sorts of people.
The level of sophistication, and we can gnash our teeth all we want about lost childhoods and AAU professionalizes stuff early on and 14-year-olds are getting paid or whatever. And I get it. There's a downside to all of that. But one of the other things that's happening is there is a level of sophistication to these players.
That's what I'm talking about.
And this generation, it is different now to go into a locker room and talk to a 21-year-old than it was to go into a locker room and talk to a 21-year-old 21 years ago. It is different. And they're looking at things differently. They're thinking differently. Honestly, my kids and their friends talk about stuff differently than I did at that age with my peers. Partly it's just a generational thing. Times always change. Attitudes always change. And so, and maybe it's because they have phones and they're getting news because they got internet on their phone, and they're seeing stuff in the world that we just didn't see. We didn't sit down and watch the evening news, and there's nowhere else to get it at our age.
The 20-year-old of today is quite comfortable on his feet.
Yeah.
If you're that level of talent.
Well, and to go back to the Boozer story, because it stands out, and it's something we talked about on the show when we got the audio and we played it. Yuck, might even be able to dig it up somewhere. It might be in the archive somewhere still. Is that you think about who Carlos Boozer was when he did that interview. To your point, he grew up in Alaska, right? So that's different. That's extreme. That's unusual. He goes to Duke. Okay, living in the South is different. Then he goes to the upper Midwest. He's in Cleveland. He comes to Utah. He leaves and goes to Chicago, a megacity, for a guy who grew up in a state that doesn't have many people, right? Now he's on the phone either late in his career or after his career. Maybe he was in Chicago at the time. And he's in Miami, which is way different than North Carolina or Utah or Cleveland or Alaska. I mean, that guy can legitimately compare in a way most people can't. I've lived all over the place.
Yeah.
I can compare these places. I've lived it.
Right.
Now, his experience isn't necessarily going to be everybody's experience. I mean, he's a celebrity and he's a multimillionaire, and somebody else is not a celebrity and not a multimillionaire.
Yeah, but that's why you've got kids from Florida choosing to come play ball at Utah.
Boy, NIL's just accelerating this phenomenon as far as, we were talking spring football. Iowa State's got a kid, and he's on his fourth school in 6 years. He's been all over the place.
And BYU just got a commitment from a defensive back from New Jersey.
What?
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen in 30 years ago.
Right. And so that young man, and he's still in high school, so he's a young man.
So we'd say all this stuff.
He's going to be able to converse with people.
But we say all this in the next player because everybody's going to have a different situation when they want to go. The number's not 0. It's still 5%.
Well, it's never going to be 0.
Right.
We understand that.
But the Lakers aren't at 0 either. That was surprising. Do they not want to? They don't want to deal with L.A., or they're not going to get them shots because Doncic takes too many? I always wonder how much of this is because they say they don't want to go to this team. Well, the team is currently in a certain. I mean, Memphis.
Well, these are guys right now.
Right. Memphis is rebuilding now. Memphis was a winning organization 4 or 5 years ago.
What I'm confident in saying, if a player does not want to be here, it's not because this is just like the one guy from San Diego walking in Provo is like walking in Alabama in the 50s.
That's not what...
The police are not going to take out a hose. There's going to be exceptions and there's going to be issues. It's not issue-free. And we're never going to be issue-free in the rest of the history of the world. We're speaking on a broad, general level.
So if a player doesn't want to come for whatever reason, state of the organization, shots, the city, whatever it is, the point now is looking at these numbers. Okay, that player doesn't want to, but the next player will, or the player after that will. But it does suck that back-to-back it was Hayward and Mitchell leaving. Not that long on the heels of Boozer and D. Will leaving. Now, the thing is, when Carlos came back and when he first started doing appearances here, and I always find it weird, the athletes who are really successful and really aggressive, like how low-key and mellow they can be off the court. For whatever reason, I got my assumptions, and that just stuns me. And I've seen that multiple sports, multiple ages. I don't know. I just expect a little more of the Jersey attitude you always talk about all the way through life. So, look, he could not wait to explain, like, hey, I left for basketball reasons. Like, we were going to win. The Lakers were bigger and better. And they were maxed out. And he talked to Greg Miller, and like they're over the luxury tax. They're maxed out. They're not going to spend anymore. Like, big guys are expensive. We're not going to get one. If I'm going to win, I got to go somewhere else. He just could not wait to explain. This is a basketball decision. And the whole time I was thinking, I was like, well, yeah, I know you don't know this, but we got the clip from Miami and we played it. I already have a pretty good idea. But he was worried that was the misconception. Like, he was just coming in filled with fear and loathing and
animosity towards the city.
And disgust. And no, this is basketball. And I'm like, yeah, if you wanted to go off, you would have gone off on a radio in Miami when you figured there are no repercussions. You could have agreed with a guy, leading question, Your Honor.
Right.
And he didn't.
No.
So, but I do think that it's changed, and partly it's just because things always change, and partly it's because people have tried to change it. Both the Millers and Ryan Smith tried to change things and recognized, hey, there's hurdles here. There's stuff here. It's hard. We had Joe Ingles on, and you asked him, what do you think? Why? And he said, well, I hear my teammates' stories, and it gives just a certain level of empathy because I know these guys, and I see their faces when they're talking. I'm like, well, this is real. It's not something Joe faced.
Right.
He's a white guy.
That's going to be out there.
Yeah.
It's always going to be out there. I've got friends.
So partly it's happened just because everything evolves over time. Everything's different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, wherever you go. There's partly that, but partly it's been intentional change that both the Millers and the Smiths are like, hey, we got to change some stuff here. And some things are small and some things are big. So it's a combination of, and I do think it goes back to Joe's conversation, and I think when I've heard Ryan Smith talk, it goes back to something you always said. Like, there's problems, but if you really want to change it, it's hard at a societal level to get on social media or get behind a podium and scream at somebody and lecture somebody.
Right.
Form a bond,
right.
Work with somebody, and find out what their hopes and dreams are and what their goals are and what they're willing to do and what their hurdles are.
And then it melts away.
Yeah. And you got a guy that you talk to. I don't know how often you text with him because you text with a lot of people all the time. You're watching games at least 6 nights a week, and you're texting with people while you do. But you talk to him once in a while, but he comes on the show and you can hear the emotion. Like, you guys don't talk all the time, but you got a bond that goes back to sitting at a desk in a building that doesn't exist anymore 35 years ago.
Right.
But that's because you got to know each other. Forget the cliches, right, and forget the posturing and forget the politics. Just, but that goes back to what somebody said a long time ago, famously, the content of the character. You know the content of his character.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. And then if you don't like that person, it may be because something just rubs you wrong. But I believe you end up liking most people that you get to know. Not everyone. I'm not sitting here saying I love everyone. I don't. There's a few people. But most people that I get to know, they're pretty good people. And I do think the bottom line here is that if a player doesn't want to be here, it's not going to be for basketball reasons, and community reasons just are through the roof, and he's going to be miserable. And they can't keep everyone anyway. Yeah. So you can't get everyone you want. But I think the Millers did a fine job. And I think the new administration and ownership is taking the ball, so to speak, and running with it and continuing to chip away.
5%. It was surprising to see that number. But it also looks like this generation of players, man, a lot of this seems to ride on basketball. Not exclusively.
Which probably it should be because it's your job and that's what you're here for.
Yeah. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Coming up next, the spring football tour takes us to Iowa State. That's next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, we're joined by Alec Busse. He covers Iowa State for Cyclone Alert and 24/7 Sports. Alec, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on. Good morning, Salt Lake.
So you go out to practice to watch this new coach. Most of the best impressive players followed the old coach to Penn State. Do you know anybody? Is this all brand new? Or guys just shaking hands and introducing themselves?
Pretty much. No, I don't know anyone on the team. I really don't know anything about them, if we're being honest. I probably know more than the average person if we're really trying to be truthful about everything. But no, it's been a huge roster turnover for Jimmy Rogers in Iowa State football. My kind of going line is someone's going to ask me on my morning radio show here in Des Moines a question about some position or some player on the team, and my response is going to be, I don't know. I apologize, but I don't know. I think I'm going to need until like the end of September or maybe to the middle of October to really get a good grasp on what this team is. But I think that kind of creates some fun, right? Like it's going to be a learning process for Iowa State fans. It's going to be a learning process for those of us who cover the Iowa State football program. And it's something I'm looking forward to being able to do throughout the summer. And then, of course, as we get to training camp and in the early parts of the season.
Well, Rogers had 16 starters in the portal leave him. I mean, or entered their name anyway. It was most in the nation. I guess you start with the quarterback. Obviously, Rocco was an institution there, and he goes to Penn State. But you got the kid, Rayner from Arkansas State, right? And he's got some impressive stats, and he's got some good experience. So at least from that standpoint, it looks like it's a decent starting point.
Yeah, so I think the Rocco Beck departure was tough for Iowa State to handle. It was pretty clear, I think, that he probably was going to try and follow Matt Campbell to Penn State. And then Jalen Rayner's kind of an interesting story as he comes to Iowa State. Cyclone fans know of him more than they would most Group of 5 quarterbacks or Group of 6 quarterbacks now because they played him the last 2 years. Arkansas State came to Ames in 2024. Cyclones went down to Jonesboro and played the Red Wolves in 2025. Rayner had a better game in 2025, but he's been a 3 or 4 year starter down at Arkansas State, someone who has thrown for around 3,000 or more than 3,000 yards multiple times in his career, has kind of seen his interception numbers climb at various points, but so have his touchdown numbers. Good athlete, not someone who has the greatest size, but I think Iowa State will be able to rely on his athleticism, his ability to play make with his legs within their offense, and they're going to try and run the ball a lot this year. I think that that's something that their offensive coordinator, Tyler Roll, takes a ton of pride in. If you look at some of his previous stops and the success that his called offenses have had. So Raiders an interesting fit. I don't think he is, going to come in with the heralded name value that Oklahoma State is getting with Drew Mestemaker coming from the Group of 5 level into the Big 12. But yeah. I don't think that Rayner is going to be the worst quarterback situation in the conference either.
They also have a transfer from Oklahoma State, right? Zane Flores, and he appears bigger, but is he not as good a runner? Is that the difference between the two?
Yeah, Zane Flores. He started, I think it was 7 games this past season for Oklahoma State. I mean, that was a disaster of a situation, to put it politely, I guess you could say. I think Flores is probably going to be their QB2. They haven't formally named Rayner the starting quarterback for this fall, but I would be really surprised if it's not Rayner. Flores, I think, was probably thrown into a position down in Stillwater to play and start before he was probably ready, with a program that was not set up to win, that ended up being in transition. He's got a big arm, throws a really pretty football, but still kind of coming along in his development. And I think his rushing ability is certainly one of those traits that he's still kind of flashing in a little bit, but still trying to find that consistency in as well.
I saw a number that 49 transfers are coming into the program. I don't know if that's accurate as we speak, but that's what I saw. And 15 of them were from Washington State. So you've got to brush up on your Cougar football. Iowa State becoming Washington State East to an extent, and those guys were with Rogers. So from that perspective, too, there's so much newness, but those guys have a level of familiarity with Rogers, so that ought to help a bit.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys are on the defensive side of the football, and I think that's where you would expect Iowa State, of its 3 phases, to kind of be at its strongest entering the season. Their defense is pretty good last year at Washington State. Rogers is a former defensive coordinator, kind of cut his teeth at the FCS level at South Dakota State. His coordinator, Jesse Bobbitt, has been with him for a while on the defensive side. Bobbitt actually took over and was the coordinator, or the interim head coach for Washington State in their bowl game. But, yeah, they bring in a lot of guys over on the defensive side from Washington State, particularly on the defensive line. Max Balloon, Bryson Lamb are 2 guys I expect to contribute at a pretty high level on the interior. Isaac Terrell is someone who was a really productive edge rusher at Washington State in a breakout season a year ago. And then there's a couple of defensive backs as well who come over from Pullman. I think you will see most of the production from the Washington State transfers be on the defensive side, contrary to the opposite side of the ball offensively, where they just brought a couple of receivers over. I just don't think that they have the depth of snaps or the depth of experience on the offensive side with the Washington State transfers as they do the defensive side of the ball.
So at running back, I can already feel the drama, and maybe you'll drop your first I don't know of the interview right here. I appreciate your honesty with that off the top. So Jaden Jackson in the spring showcase breaks off a 60-yard run immediately. Oh, maybe this is the running back, except he just left the program a couple of weeks after that spring showcase. So he's gone, and they brought in a guy from Oregon State, which I guess Washington State played him twice, so I guess you can pretty well scout him. Except he can't practice. He's on a scooter, and they don't see what the injury is. So what is happening at running back? What does that depth chart look like, or you just got a bunch of names in a hat, and that has to be sorted out?
Yeah, so some recent developments there. So Jaden Jackson does depart the team. I wasn't expecting him to be a contributor for Iowa State this fall at running back. He didn't play at all during his redshirt freshman season in 2025. Jimmy Rogers kind of talked about after the spring showcase that they needed to see more from him. It just sounded like there were some frustrations with him meeting the demands of what the coaching staff ask of the players in various areas. So Jackson leaves the program. So that hurts some of their depth at that position, of course. And then yesterday they hosted, they landed, I should say, Tulane transfer Arnold Barnes, a tailback who comes in from the American Conference. Has never been ultra productive in his career. 2024 was his best season. He rushed for over 400 yards that season for the Green Wave and had all 6 of his career touchdowns. I think last season he ran for about 270 or 280 yards, I think it was. He'll give them some depth around Cam Pettaway and Aiden Flora. Pettaway is probably the guy who I would expect to be at the top of the list for Iowa State this fall. He was the MAC Freshman of the Year this past season, but he actually had more kick return yards. I think that was about 390 to 400. They needed rushing yards, which was closer to 360 or 370. Pettaway's a speedy kid, has good contact balance. Flora's a name that Iowa State fans, I think, are pretty excited about. He was retained from the old coaching staff. He had 2 really long punt returns for Iowa State last year. Both set up scoring opportunities. One came in week 1 of the season as Iowa State moved to 2-0 with a blowout win over South Dakota. And then another one was a clutch punt return in Iowa State's road win over TCU, which kind of gave them some momentum. Late in the season as they closed an extended losing streak there. But then Salahadin Allah, who you mentioned, was on the scooter in the spring showcase, spring scrimmage. He's going to miss the entire season. He has a torn right Achilles, and I think that's really what led to Iowa State deciding that they needed to go add some depth and bring in Arnold Barnes. But because before they added Barnes, they had just about 830 college rushing yards on their roster, and none of those were as a power conference back, or I shouldn't say none of those, very few of those were as a power conference back. So it's a position group that doesn't have a lot of experience. It doesn't have a lot of proven production, but I think it's an important position group for this Iowa State offense because, like I said, I think Tyler Roll, the offensive coordinator, wants to run the football quite a bit.
Well, if they want to run the football, you got to have a good offensive line, and they lost a couple of guys to transfers, Black to Nebraska, I think Bird to Penn State, followed Campbell over there, obviously, and they brought in 10 new linemen. That's a lot. How do you think that's going to work?
Yeah, anytime you have to bring in that many offensive linemen to the portal, it's natural to have questions there. And I think the staff is still kind of trying to figure out what their best combination of 5 guys is across their offensive line right now. One thing that I was really, really impressed with what the staff did in their roster building in January was a scholarship balance across the offensive line. So they have 15 total offensive linemen that are classified as a senior, junior, or sophomore, but they're all redshirt players. So they have 15 total redshirt seniors, juniors, sophomores combined. So that's an experienced group in terms of just college years in a college program or snaps in general. I have some questions just about like power conference production, how some of that translates. They do have a transfer from Oklahoma, Jake Taylor, who I think will start at one of the tackle positions. They've got some guys coming in who I think would have started this upcoming season at their previous stop or were previous starters. So it's a group that I think they're still trying to have gel. I think it's a group that they also feel like right now they can play up to 8 or 9 guys. I think naturally you want to dwindle that down closer to 7 or 8 and rotate those guys if you have to, but still kind of feel like you've got clear identifiable positions for each of those each of those players while still also kind of cross-training them. Offensive line is a complicated position to kind of manage and sift through as well.
That brings us to wide receiver. Is Cody Jackson the top dog there? I am impressed. This will be his fourth school in 6 years. I'm not clear looking at it why he's getting a sixth year. But from Oklahoma to Houston to Tarleton State to Iowa State, the well-traveled Cody Jackson, or is there somebody else they're really looking to there?
Yeah, he's one of the more interesting guys on the entire roster to me. So you mentioned his previous stops. He was never really productive when he was playing in the Big 12 previously, despite being a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. Oklahoma didn't really produce there. Houston did not produce in his 2 seasons with the Cougars. Dropped down to the FCS level, was really good down there, and he's going to come back up to the Big 12 and see if he can produce up here for maybe a third time as a charm. He's not one that I'm banking on contributing at a high level. I think Evan Boyd, the Michigan State transfer, is one that I could see making an impact. I also think that Carter Paps, a transfer from Washington State, is one guy on the offensive side who comes over from Wazoo that I could see make an impact for Iowa State. Receivers, a unique position for this staff. During the spring scrimmage, they were rotating guys through first, second, and third string, trying to find the right fit for a lot of different guys, getting them in different positions, be it the X, Y, or the Z. The one name that you guys may have had some familiarity with is Dominic Overby. He's from that Salt Lake area, tall kid, long kid, has really good speed. He had some nice flashes last year, especially as a deep ball threat on those go balls down the sideline. I'm intrigued to see what his next step could be for Iowa State, because I think he has some of the physical tools and he had some nice flashes last year, but now that he's set to enter his third year of college in 2026, I'm intrigued to see if he's able to kind of put more of that together with an opportunity to climb the depth chart under a new coaching staff.
Mike Harper, we're also familiar with. I think he transferred in from Montana by way of BYU. You going to play?
Yeah, and I think his role probably was set to increase throughout the spring because Iowa State lost what, in my opinion, was their biggest addition via the transfer portal on defense, and Braden Alls. Alls was coming in from Toledo. I think he has about 9 career interceptions. Cyclones landed him in the portal after he took a visit to Indiana. Not sure how much the Hoosiers pushed for him, but clearly Indiana showed enough interest to bring him on campus for a visit. I think that injury, the ACL tear to Alls, is going to set up guys like Harper to have a bigger role for Iowa State this coming fall. And, Harper's had an interesting career arc. He played a lot in his time at BYU, more than 25 career appearances, I believe. Had an injury there that led him to missing a season, saw his role kind of dwindle, and then he transfers down to the FCS level, has a lot of success with a good Montana program at that level. Now he's back in the Big 12. So I'm really intrigued to see what type of impact he can make. Maybe doesn't always have the greatest physical size or traits, but as someone who has been productive at BYU and someone who I think Iowa State can probably rely on to give them a large number of snaps and potentially be a starter for them as well on the back end.
Iowa State last year was really defined by its defense. Didn't give up more than 21 points in any of the 8 victories. How much is it intact? I mean, the offense sounds like it's just all transfer portal. Is there anything left from that defense? Because that defense was pretty good. They weren't great, but they were pretty good.
Yeah, there's a couple guys. On the defensive line, Zamir Hawk returns. I actually think he's a better fit in this new defensive scheme than the old one. He was just kind of a tweener between positions on that 3-man front that they ran under the previous coaching staff. They do retain a couple of linebackers. Carson Willick would be the one that I think is set to contribute the most. He struggled to stay healthy throughout his career, but if he can stay healthy, I know the staff feels confident in his just kind of football IQ, some of his leadership at the middle of the defense. And then in the secondary, it is a lot of new players, like you mentioned. They do retain a couple guys. David Coffey at corner is one who I think that they're bullish on being able to start. Has very limited experience in terms of on-the-field stuff, but he'll be a third-year player this season as well.
Are Iowa State fans more upset that Kalani Sitake didn't take the Penn State job or that Campbell did?
I think they're more upset that Matt Campbell took the job. I don't know if they hold any ill will to Kalani Sitake for staying. I think that this is the first time that I've had the opportunity to cover a coaching transition professionally. I did it once when I was in college as a student journalist, and I'm much more into it now, and the environment of the way it all works is much more different now. In the last couple of weeks, there's been some frustration, I think, boil over with some commentary that Matt Campbell has made on like the Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman podcast on On3 about recruiting some of the transfers to Penn State and, getting emotional, hosting them and their families for visits. He took, I think, about 20 to 25 Iowa State players with him to Happy Valley. And I think that kind of feels like to Iowa State fans that he left and then he burned the house down on the way out as well. I certainly understand why those feelings would exist, but I also would just ask the question, what is he supposed to do? It's kind of just the way the world works. And Jimmy Rogers brought 15 players with him from Washington State. I wrote on my website earlier this week that I think it's a great example of just like, don't hate the player, hate the game. And sometimes the game right now and the way that college athletics is set up, it can be really frustrating for the fan, especially when you think about all the roster turnover, particularly when there is a coaching change. I think some fans understand that a little bit better than others. I think some fans understand that once Campbell left, he didn't really owe anything to Iowa State anymore, but there's still the hurt feelings of, man, he left and he took all these players with him. And we were expecting or hoping, speaking from the thought of a fan, they thought that I think 2026 could be a really good year for them. And he left right before that. So I think that's kind of part of what cuts a little bit deeper for Iowa State fans.
The parallels aren't perfect, but you wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few parallels with Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan.
Yeah, and I know that just following it from afar that they lost some players from Utah to Michigan, a couple guys on the defensive line, but maybe not nearly the volume. And I think Morgan Scalley was able to keep some of that roster intact just because he was a coach in waiting and he was on staff. So there was a familiarity there that those Ute players had with Scalley, and there was an ability to kind of keep some continuity while also losing. The offensive coordinator goes to Ann Arbor. They lost some other players at various positions as well, but there are some similarities for sure. I think Iowa State just kind of took it to the extreme.
Yeah. Well, Alec, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, and I guess you will still be figuring out when Iowa State plays Utah on September 26th and travels to BYU on October 10th. Maybe by then there'll be a little clarity.
Hopefully before that BYU game, I've got a good grasp, and hopefully by that Utah game when we may talk again, I'm able to give you guys some more insight on where the Cyclones are officially at. But thank you guys so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully you got some good weather out there.
There's Alec Busse talking Iowa State football. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.